So we talked about defensive ends, and I think Tennessee did a poor job of utilizing James Pierce. NFL scouts could prove me wrong. He could go in the first round, and then, fine. But they didn't get what they thought they were going to get out of him at Tennessee. Now Caleb has some information that maybe their defensive tackles weren't incredibly well used. What can you say about that, sir?
Yeah, so two things kind of stand out about their defensive tackles. As you guys know, they lost three key ones: Amari Thomas, Elijah Simmons, and Omarr Norman-Lott. Amari Thomas was the leader of the group, but in terms of just raw physical talent, was probably the least talented of the three. Wouldn't you agree? And that's not a knock on him. He just didn't have the physical freak status of Elijah Simmons and didn't have the ability to rush the passer that Omarr Norman-Lott
had. Tell me again who you'd have third.
Amari Thomas, in terms of raw talent, not production, not leadership, not intangibles, anything, other things that are valuable, but in terms of just raw ability, Amari Thomas was third on that list of talent, wasn't he? Behind
yes, as long as you don't factor in Elijah Simmons' health issues, because that was a reason why he didn't play more. He was constantly hurt. So, but I see where you're going.
Yeah. So we already know Amari Thomas with the leadership and intangibles. Omarr Norman-Lott stood out all week to scouts last week at the senior day, and to the point to where they started questioning why he didn't play more.
They haven't gone to the combine yet, and which they'll do an extensive physical. That'll be his issue.
Right. No, that's very true. And you know this, Dave, the Senior Bowl, it's very easy to overreach yourself or underreach yourself in the Senior Bowl. Honestly, there are so many things that go
very good. Actually, I know players that match up where they get in line, so they go against other players that they know they're better than.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because when you like an offensive and defensive line, you're going at it, like whether it's receivers, defensive backs, or whatever. Yeah, so that happens.
So Norman-Lott played just 17.3 snaps per game this past year. And there were
First of all, that's ridiculous, because I could tell you by eyeball test that he was the best overall interior rusher. Now, I can't tell you if he did everything right on run block or run stoppage all the time, but I will tell you that as far as a guy that can shed tackles, he was by far their best at defensive tackle.
Yeah, and isn't it insane that he only played that many snaps per game but had 4 sacks on the year?
Insane. It's troubling. It would be something that at the end of the year, you get caught up in stuff in football, and you don't really know who's getting that many snaps, and things are going up. They're moving a mile a minute. But at the end of the year, if Josh Heupel doesn't look at that and have a major problem like Rodney, Garner, Tim Banks, why didn't this guy play more? Then, he should play 30 snaps, especially Caleb, since they went to a slower offense. It's not like they were worn out.
Exactly. And see, then came the news that Elijah Simmons was invited to the NFL Combine. Also was a rotational player. With those two in mind, and with Omarr Norman-Lott playing 17.3 snaps, my question is, and I wanted to pose this to you, Dave, did the desire for depth, did they lean on that too much and maybe sacrifice just actual better players playing more snaps sometimes?
Yes.
I get the thing, you want to keep guys fresh, but did they overdo it?
Yes. And Kelly brings up a good point. Big O would be a great offensive guard. He would have played offensive guard 15, 20 years ago, back when the earth was cooling and I was around. There's no question he would have been moved to offensive guard, in my opinion. But he had the athletic ability to play. I'm not questioning that. I'm questioning in particular Omarr Norman-Lott. The way he shed blocks. I'm not going to question Elijah Simmons. So who else am I missing on that interior?
Well, those are the three. Those Amari Thomas, Omarr Norman-Lott, and Elijah Simmons are the three.
Right, but I'm just asking who went in for those guys? Because Simmons, I'll give the benefit of the doubt to because of injuries. I will give Tennessee's staff the benefit of the doubt there, but I'm having trouble finding guys that, I don't know. It just seems really difficult to me to find guys that should have played among them. You can pull up the roster coverage brought to you by Double D Piping Fire Suppression.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
All right, Caleb. So let's take a look at the production last year.
All right. And I got the total number of snaps for the whole defensive lineup.
Okay. I bet you're not going to come up with one player that should have played more than Omarr Norman-Lott. I bet you're not going to come up with maybe one that should have played above. Oh goodness, your guy that you interviewed. Oh man,
Amari Thomas.
Yeah, Amari Thomas. And you might come up with a couple because of Elijah Simmons' injury. So I want to give Tennessee the benefit of the doubt of that. Who we got?
Okay, so let's just start with Elijah Simmons only played 187 snaps. So, I mean, Jason Jenkins, Omarr Norman-Lott, Amari Thomas, Bryson Eason, Dominic Bailey, David Hobbs, Jackson Boy, all played more than him.
Okay,
now,
slow down a second. Can you go back? Simmons, again, gets the injury pass. Give me the next one.
All right, so the next one. Let's go with Omarr Norman-Lott. And this is the one that I think is going to make your head explode, Dave, because I think they rotated him way too much. Now, Jason Jenkins, Tyree West, and Dominic.
Just a little bit slower. Jenkins, to me, is a great complimentary player. He has limited upside. And then you had who?
Tyree West, who didn't play more, but played close, like roughly the same amount.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with playing Tyree West more because he's probably a little bit, given his size, a little bit better of a run guy. So I'm okay with that one too. Again, I would play Omarr Norman-Lott, but I'm not going to get on my soapbox.
Well, and also they played more on the end where Omarr Norman-Lott would lock up one of the middle spots.
Right.
So now here's the other ones that played more. Dominic Bailey.
That's ridiculous.
416 snaps. Dominic Bailey played more snaps than anybody else on the defensive line this year. Amari Thomas.
Okay.
Bryson Eason played more than Omarr Norman-Lott. And last but not least is Jackson Moy played more snaps than Omarr Norman-Lott.
Okay. 2 that you mentioned, Moy, you have to make a little bit happy because you went and got him in the transfer portal, right?
Right.
And then David Hobbs, you have to make him a little bit happy to tell him that he's going to play next year. So those make sense to me. But there's a couple there that make no sense to me. We love Omari Thomas. He was awesome to do the show. But if you're telling me he's half as good as Omarr Norman-Lott, you're crazy.
Yeah, no, Omarr Norman-Lott is better and more talented. And Bryson Eason is not better than Omarr Norman-Lott either. Bryson Eason played 137 more snaps than Omarr Norman-Lott did this year. But honestly, we're not just looking at the guys who played more snaps. Look at the guys who played close to them in snaps because that shows that they were sacrificing Omarr Norman-Lott for depth. I mean, again, going this deep, and I think you would agree with me, Dave, on this, it makes sense if you have a bunch of solid to above average defensive linemen and freshness is your value, right?
Yes.
But if you have 3 really good ones that can make an impact, you do them more. I guess the best example I use is you've seen those basketball teams that are not great, but they go 10 deep and they run 10 guys all the time, and that keeps them fresh for the NCAA tournament, and they can make a bit of a run. But eventually, don't they run into somebody where they may not be as deep, but their 5 is way better than any of your 10? So it doesn't really matter. I mean, when you shorten the rotation. And you look at this and you're like, why didn't Omarr Norman-Lott play more? And I know what you're saying about Elijah Simmons, Dave, but I'm pushing back because Elijah Simmons seemed healthy for most of this year. I mean, he played 25 snaps at certain games this year. So I'm not willing to give up on give people Elijah Simmons either because I thought Elijah Simmons was mostly healthy this year. And so I just thought they relied too much on depth, honestly.
Well, I agree with that. But here's the other factor that you have to put in there is in NIL, do you have to make these guys happy? I mean, how many of those guys that you just mentioned are gone? I mean, if David Hobbs didn't play a snap last year, he was a 5-star guy. He's gone.
Right? How okay, but Dave, what about this? What if you say to those guys, would you rather constantly have to split snaps with somebody or ride the bench one year and then you get all the reps the next year?
See, I'm not arguing with that notion. I'm just saying in this NIL world, these are 19 and 20-year-old kids, not 35-year-old Caleb and 50-year-old Dave making these decisions.
Well, make the NIL promise. You're like, you'll still collect some money while riding the bench. We can make you that promise, but like, we want you there for us next year.
It sounds good, but they want to play, dude. I mean, honestly, if I said, Caleb, you can make $250,000 for Off the Hook Sports a year, but you can only write, and I'm not going to use your byline because I just want to say Off the Hook Sports, and you're never going to be on the show. That doesn't sound as good as what we're doing now.
No, it doesn't.
It has to make $250,000 a year. Don't get me wrong. I mean, maybe you would take it. I don't know. But for same money, we're not going to discuss what you make, but for same money, you'd rather play. You'd rather
I'd rather do the show. Yes, exactly. I agree on all of that. But I'm like, the playing promise is like, that's so short-sighted. You want to constantly be splitting reps with people rather than sit a year, and then the next year you take all the snaps and you can really build your NFL profile because you're playing all the snaps.
Okay. Matt's eating and smelling what I'm cooking. He says, how many defensive linemen did they lose to the NIL? Enough said. They didn't.
Yeah, but the NIL is about paying, not playing time. So just pay them.
Well, it's not just that, though. It's also transfer portal. I mean, because you can transfer so much easier. Used to be, I'd say, Caleb, you can't go anywhere for a year unless you go to a school that I say you can go to, and maybe I make you pay your own way, which still to me is the worst rule in the history of all in sports. To make an amateur athlete pay his own way is befuddling to me.
Well, college football had the most anti-market rules for 100 years, honestly. But I agree. And I'm fine with that. I think you could have worked out with some players to understand what their roles were going to be. I honestly think, I think this was more the coaches just valuing depth. I mean, you talk about playing time and NIL, Dave. They didn't do this on the offensive line. They had 5 guys and they played 5 guys.